Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. I want to share with you some insider information on the deep corruption, the crime in the city of Baltimore. And I've been kind of hinting at the Pelosi connection because her father was the mayor of Baltimore, very, very corrupt. And her brother was also a mayor, and her brother was also, her other brother was also embroiled in a scandal with rape and kidnapping. And then her husband, Paul Pelosi, of course, has all kinds of scandals of his own that I'm going to share with you. I might do that on a different video, but what I want to share with you is an insider's view to this corruption. And I want to thank Faith Dyson. She allowed me to share her name, and she sent me an email just a couple of days ago, and I'm going to read it to you. And it says, "Hi, Peggy. My name is Faith Dyson. If you've delved much further into Maryland government corruption, that last name should set off alarms for you. I came by it when I married into the family." And so she goes on to say, "Senator Roy Dyson of Southern Maryland is my now deceased husband's cousin. They have roads named after them in that crony-ridden area. My point is that I have no real blood relation to shame me into hanging into their dirty little secrets. And in fact, I have a huge motive for spilling them to the public. The short version of their atrocities is that they are into the, let's see, how do I put it delicately on this channel? They are not treating children very well. Yes, I'll put it that way. And they are restricting their movement. Yes, I'll put it that way as well." And she says, "And adults. But it's the former that I have an inside whistleblower to prove it, and other means to prove the latter," into the how do I put it, the restricting the movement of children and adults. This can all be tied back to the illegal experiments done to foster children by Fauci and, that big drug company that starts with the PF back in the 1980s and 90s, and possibly even to the Clintons, known for their involvement of the same crimes due to their connection with Laura Silsby absconding children from Haiti during the same period. So what I uncovered, again, this is Faith Dyson writing to me, what I uncovered is that the Maryland Child Protective Services took nearly 50,000 children in 1 year alone. And when the cases had cleared through the court system, only 14,000 were allegedly from dangerous or neglectful situations. But the state kept all, it adds up to 48,000, and the extra children never went back to their safe and loving homes. She said, "This report is part of what I exposed in a piece that was actually cited in Chapter 7 of RFK Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci." And she has a link to that. And then she says, "Before you take offense at the association, you need to know that I wasn't even told that RFK had used my article. I wasn't told that he had done so, nor have I received a penny for it. But my main point in telling you this is that neither he, RFK Jr., nor I have been sued for reporting this information. That's because it's all true." She says, "My assertions especially are based on documented evidence that comes from the Child Protective Services offices. It's all been done, even in the counties that elected Roy Dyson, and then it was all covered up by the Demwits that control them." She writes, "I know Roy is well aware of the criminal activity because I told him about it. And then I was threatened with being charged with the crime of harassment if I didn't stop expecting him to investigate and to do something to end the state-sponsored kidnappings." She writes, "I'm not the only person over the years to try to do the same. I recall at least 8 deaths of children in Maryland under their state care that got the public's attention, but the woman who blew the whistle at that time was discredited in the fake news." Faith writes, "I wasn't given that treatment, maybe because my name would have given them more credence. And in fact, it got me totally ignored by every paper in the Washington, D.C. area. As innocent of this international ring as I was at the time, I even tried contacting news media in Europe, and they said, 'Oh, we're not interested.' No one wanted to investigate what was happening to the kids except for me and Liam Sheff, who is now also deceased. He was my best friend and mentor. And he was also cited in this chapter 7 of RFK Jr.'s book, exposing Fauci's torture of 500 plus foster children in NYC during his illegal AIDS experiments. All right. And this is cited, and I will leave a link for you in my Substack, which is peggyhall.substack.com. I'm going to continue reading, but I do want to just validate this, and I'm going to share my screen. And this is a Facebook post, and it's by Faith Dyson, who is the author of this email that I'm reading to you that she sent to me to read with her blessings. And this is it here. It's titled, "Was Fauci's Role in Funding Tuskegee-like AIDS experiments on foster children in 7 US states?" And that was included here. We're over at the Children's Health Defense, and that was chapter 7, Faith Dyson, what was Fauci's role? And so that is what I'm sharing with you as her behind the scenes information. So let me continue with her email. All right. Fauci was never sued, and he was due to his, I'm sorry, her associate, Liam Sheff, was never sued for bringing forth this information. And due to his truthfulness, there was even a congressional hearing into the matter, after which Fauci and that PF company were allowed to continue in the same format for the surprise hogwash that we experienced that came a few decades later. However, when the smoke cleared from that circus, I found that nearly 15,000 children were tortured in 7 US states. And one of the sources for the lab rats, you guessed it, was Maryland. I suspect, she says, that's what happened to a lot of those 48,000 plus kidnapped children. Miss Nancy P. Pelosi seems to be having those mostly black and brown slaves around to do certain chores. She said, "I'll let your imagination run," related to her husband's tendencies. All right. You may have caught that in the news a couple of years ago. I will be doing another video for you coming up, specifically focusing on that crime family and all of their dealings in Maryland, Nancy Pelosi's corrupt husband, the traffic accidents, the deaths, her own son's ability to somehow magically sidestep these federal investigations. But I guess that's no surprise, because Nancy Pelosi's own brother was acquitted not only of perjury, but of rape and kidnapping when his buddies around the age of 20 were all found guilty for kidnapping 11 and 12-year-olds, having their way with them in some sort of furnished apartment. And these girls pointed the finger at Pelosi's brother, and somehow magically the charges disappeared. So how do you like them apples? Let me continue with this email. So I will save that story for another video, because there's a lot to go into. So Faith Dyson says, Miss Nancy Pelosi always seems to have an endless supply of US citizens on their menu, because I'm sure this criminal activity hasn't stopped, not with this level of duplicity that goes all the way up to Pennsylvania Avenue, meaning Washington, D.C. Here in Oklahoma, where I've since moved, since discovering that part of the story, I have even more whistleblowers telling me that foster children are aging out of the system here. And they're telling me tales of them being used in experiments in area hospitals. But this is so disheartening. We need to pray for all of these affected. She said, I also did a deep dive into the homeless situation here. And I got to tell you, what they're doing to the US citizens who are vets, disabled, elderly, mentally ill, those that were victims of all of the hogwash, and just plain poor people and their children, it's just as criminal. They're trafficking them through the same system as the foster kids. They're getting as much double dipping as possible with both federal funds, which invalidate their religious 501(c)(3) status, and private donations, meaning these, foster children programs, and they're double dipping as much as they can get. But here's the kicker for Oklahoma's criminal activity. She'd say, I have to poke a little bit more around in Maryland to see what they're doing from this angle. But Oklahoma's red state government is using both federal and local taxes to build what's called the new innovation district in Oklahoma City. And you know what that means, the smart 15-minute cities. It's the focal point of which will be, and she's saying the CCPs, let's just say medical interventions hub fronted by Cytovance Biologics. All right, I need to do a little more deep digging on that. She said, I cannot get any of the deadbeat officials, the senators, the representatives, et cetera, to admit this to the public. She said, I'm all over their post on Twitter. I'm doing it all by myself. I cannot get the state auditor. I can't get anyone to investigate it unless I get a whistleblower inside of a government department. She said, I'll give you one guess as to which group of people are being ripened by all the lethal pollution in the shelters to become the chosen lab rats for their projects. Yes, it's the vets. It's the disabled, the elderly, the mentally ill, and the poor folks, including their children. They have no idea what's being prepared for them. She said, there's a lot more that I can tell you, but this should be enough to pique your interest. How does this tie in with the bridge incident? She said, I bet it has something to do with the port. And I need a little space here for the algorithm, getting children in and out of it. Now, many of you have emailed me and you've left comments in the videos with your concerns over exactly what was in those containers. And I have no evidence that that's the case, but I'm just reading you the email from someone who is well-versed in the corruption of that state. She goes on to say, this reminds me of the congressional hearing into Child Protective Services and their dealings with children in California quite a few years ago. One ex-FBI agent testified to seeing plane loads of American kids being shipped out to Europe. This also reminds me that Synergy rang a bell with me. And remember, Synergy, I did coverage on that. I have a whole playlist about the Baltimore Bridge incident, and Synergy is the managing company overseeing that Dolly ship. She says, this reminds me that the Synergy rang a bell with me in connection to the genome editing project. I could swear their involvement with the health industry is all connected in that too. I'll go further than claiming that this sets my spidey sense to tingling, because I'm sure I read that Synergy, which is now a common term, is also in the cocktail business. She says, when I was researching the hogwash. All right, that should be enough for now, she says. If you have anything you'd like me to help you dig into, just let me know. And she gives me her information. I sure hope all of this info leads somewhere good that can stop these monsters from harming everyone. I'm a mom, I have kids, I have grandkids. And yes, I want the harms to stop. They already got to one of my twin sons. I may be able to forgive, but not let folks run wild without due and lawful punishment. I don't know how much more of this mess I can stand, but on one final note, I have to say I am not suicidal. My main goal is to live, not desist. Lastly, thank you for all you do. I know how much work goes into researching for hours and trying to take care of a household, husband, children, animals, parishioners. She said, been there, done that with 3 disabled children, and I found the truly healthy way to cure them of their disorder. She says, that's another story. The government is causing that too. And I think you know what she's talking about, using the same method that they do with people. And it's all through the propaganda. It's all connected. And I can prove that also. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with you, Faith. So let's all give our gratitude to Faith. And I love her name is Faith because she is stepping out in faith, living forward in faith, and sharing this very compelling information, which was published in RFK's book without her knowledge, without her permission, without getting a penny. But I am glad, and she's glad, that this information is getting out there. So thank you, Faith, for being a very valued member of the Healthy American community. And I know that God is going to protect you and direct you and bring you peace. And that is my prayer for all of us here as we are on this journey, marching it all the way to heaven. A quick reminder to resubscribe to this channel. The algorithm likes to unsubscribe you and hide my videos. You click on videos, click on live, and then also get on my second channel, which is called Living Swell with Peggy Hall. That way, if something happens to this channel, we can still connect. And always over at my Substack, peggyhall.substack.com. It's important that we expose the evildoers, shine light on their deeds, and continue to, as I say, march this all the way to heaven. See you soon, everybody.